Hello, my name is Dr. Carl Candlepun, and this is the 9th official episode of my Lost podcast. As such, it features spoilers for up to and including Season 1, Episode 9, Solitary. It features no spoilers beyond this point in the show. However, if you have not seen at least to this point in the series, I highly encourage you to do so first before proceeding with this podcast. But without further ado, let's begin. Hello, and welcome to Dr. Candlepun's Lost podcast. I am Christopher Huth, otherwise known as Dr. Candlepun.
And I am Mike Huth, also known as Intern Flickerson.
And today we are talking about episode 9 of Lost, Solitary. So I don't really know where I want to start with this, so I'm going to put you on the spot and just ask you for general thoughts.
I kept, trying to remember like what was going to happen or trying to assume what was going to happen. I mean, nothing revealed itself to me from 20 years ago when I watched that episode. I don't remember a single thing except for vaguely the golf. Vaguely that kind of was like, oh yeah, I forgot, like Hurley did that.
Yeah.
But going back to the captivity piece, and man, I missed 100% of my assumptions. Like I was waiting for him to stab her. I was waiting for him to get the drop on her, choke her out. Like there's all kinds of things I was expecting from Saeed in this particular episode that clearly he didn't do it 20 years ago and he didn't do it today.
Well, so because this introduces that character and, she kind of tells very, very vaguely her story. A lot of mythology or the seeds for mythology get dropped in this episode as far as like the backstory of the island and certain things that may or may not be happening there. Like she says, for example, things like the Black Rock. What does that mean? The others, they were carriers. The people with me, they were sick. All these things are just like, what does she mean by these? Like, what does that mean? Did any of those things ring a bell or make you remember things?
Not a thing.
That's fine.
All I got out of that was she's mentally ill. Except for this, when she said that they whisper, they whisper in the jungle and whatnot. That did take me, and it wasn't a Walking Dead thing. It took me to like, oh, that's right. Like they hear voices when they're, at least I think I remember when they're by themselves, they hear voices.
Yeah. Well, Saeed certainly did.
At the end. Yeah.
It's funny because I remember being young and watching this for the first time and just like being totally into how mysterious everything she says is. Watching it, like, as I've gotten older with other people, like I'm always worried that people are going to be frustrated by how many questions she raises and that aren't really clarified by the end of the episode. But obviously, I pointed out a few of the things that she said. Something that I want to point out that I think went over my head for a long time is when she first starts telling her story to Saeed, she says that we were part of a science team. And then before she continues, he goes, a science team armed with rifles? And she kind of like makes a face and then just ignores him and continues on with the story. Did you kind of catch on to that? And like,
yeah, I did. Yeah.
Any thoughts on why a science team would bring?
No, I didn't allow myself to think about it too much, unfortunately, because when she said science team, I got caught up listening to that and then remembering, because she talked about transmissions and what she say, our instruments, when malfunction. Yeah. And I'm trying to remember, because I felt like I remembered that everybody who got there was a plane crash. And so I got really caught up in the fact, like, oh, that's right. They were a shipwreck, yeah. Right? And so I kind of got caught up in that, and I just didn't. I missed going back and thinking about that as the episode progressed from there.
Gotcha. Okay. Any thoughts on this mysterious sickness that she's referring to? I know you just said you don't remember it, which is the only reason I'm asking. If you did remember it, I wouldn't ask.
Yeah, no. I in my mind, when people make statements like carriers and sickness. You think of like patient zero, in my mind, I still all I'm fathoming is mental illness. Like she, I don't know who she's referring to as the carriers, right?
Well, it's these others that she's talking about. She thinks Saeed's one of these other people that she says she's never seen but hears, and she calls them the carriers. So the idea is that her team crashed on the island. They had some kind of encounter, but apparently she didn't see anybody.
Yeah.
And then after that, her team got sick. And so she's assuming that these people were the carrier that caused the illness somehow. So yeah.
And as far as the illness goes, all I can wrap my mind around is they got, mentally ill, and she sees that, which of course she talks about how she deals with that later in the episode. And then of course the way she's acting, it lends credibility to the fact that like there might not have been anything wrong with these people. It might have just been her. And there might not have needed to be a carrier. She might have just lost her mind. And then again, some other things that she reveals later in the episode goes, okay, yeah, that's probably what it is.
Gotcha.
I'm now concerned she's just mentally ill and killed perfectly normal people.
Yeah, fair. Was that she leaves him? I think it's the last thing she says to him when she walks off is the people that he's going to go back to. She tells him to watch them closely. How did you take that when she said that? Like, what did you take that to mean?
More mental illness. like if she would have been more specific, hey, watch for them if they start, twitching their left eye, they've been bitten or whatever. But I just, like she said it, and I almost, nothing I can hang this on. I just imagine Saeed being like, oh, okay, I'll watch my people. But I'm going to keep mine opposed to slowly killing them all off. So if she would have just been more specific, like, hey, if they start acting this way, the others have gotten to them, then I think it might have piqued my interest and gave me more things to think about, but I just didn't.
Well, but it does sound like you took her to be referring to the sickness.
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yes.
No.
Yeah, for sure.
And I always took it the same way. But this time watching it, I thought it was interesting that, like, at least as far as I recall it, they weren't talking about the sickness right before that, and then she says that, and it's like, well, maybe she wasn't even referring to that. Maybe she's referring to something else. So I was just curious if maybe you thought.
Yeah. No, I didn't pick anything else. I mean, and I guess again, that's just the version of me that's like, she kind of gave it the ghost when she said that's what she, that was her main concern before. And so like everything just kind of revolves back to that with me. So yeah. I probably threw her that bridge.
Well, so something that somebody asked me about once when Rousseau's first asking him about the picture, and he says that she's dead, the woman in the picture. But then obviously by the episode's end, we find out she got away. He doesn't seem to know what her fate was. Any thoughts of yours on why he? Besides, I feel like there's an obvious one, but on why he just said that she's dead versus just telling the truth.
In my mind, I first allowed myself to believe, well, there'll be another flashback that shows her death, and it'll probably be terrible at the hands of whatever's left of his regime.
Well, so let me point something out real quick before you get off on that. Because the reason I'm asking the question is, at the end of the episode, he says to Rousseau that he's been holding on for the past 7 years to the hope that she's still out there, which tells us that he doesn't know she's dead, and therefore means that when he said that earlier, he was oversimplifying things or just being deceptive, however you want to classify it. Yeah, sorry.
No, that's funny though, because I don't remember that being what he said. I thought he said something to the effect that would lend credibility to him talking about like if there's another universe or somewhere in
that's what she writes,
the realm of time.
Yeah, what she writes.
So maybe because she wrote that when he said that was just immediately where my mind went, is that someday they might be together again.
Yeah.
Is what I was thinking. And what did she and her translation was, find me in the next life.
If you don't find me in this life, you'll find me in the next one.
Yes, okay.
Yeah. And then when he says, I've held on for the past 7 years to the hope that she's out there, and that for as long as he's been doing that, he's been pulling away from other people, pushing other people away.
Which, to that point, I mean, here's a theory that, and I don't remember what's revealed in the end, if anything, about Nadia, but it very well could simply come down to the fact that when he was found out to have, aided and abetted her, and I'm assuming that somehow that was found out because I don't recall it, that they told him how, the miserable death she suffered and that she didn't get away, almost to torture him more,
and that he just didn't believe,
and he
didn't want to believe it.
Yeah, maybe he took it for value, and then he wavers like, well, I didn't see it, I didn't see any proof of that. They said it. I know the things I would say in a situation like that, and maybe he's just came to trust that there's just as good a chance that they never caught her, and they were just doing that to torture him and not give him any satisfaction in the outcome of the situation he kind of caused or at least perpetrated.
Yeah. The only counter I would have to that, and again, this isn't me saying you're wrong, I just like to try and play devil's advocate as if I
love it when you do it. I love it when you do it. Go ahead, skip.
Would they have let him live if they had found out that he had done that?
Well, be an interesting way to put that. I'm just putting a couple shiny nickels on the fact that maybe Saeed just escaped their custody.
Yeah. Fair. Okay.
Has to be some reason why he wasn't in his mother country and on a flight in Australia.
Yeah. Well, so when somebody asked me that about why I thought he said she's dead earlier when he's strapped to the bed spring, that versus the end of the episode where he says, like, look, I actually don't know that. I mean, obviously that's not how he says it. But Rousseau says something later in that conversation when she's asking about what the writing on the back means, and did he write it or did she write it? And she's like, perhaps you don't want to tell me. Perhaps it's too painful to talk about. That to me is the answer for why, like, when she's asking what happened to her, she's dead. That's the easy thing. I don't want to talk about. I don't want to go into the details of what happened, or what my life has been like since then, and holding on to the hope and all that. Versus at the end of the episode, seeing how she's been living isolated and alone for such a long time, and what that's done to her, he kind of realizes, okay, I made a mistake by leaving the beach. I've made a mistake these past 7 years, not forming attachments and holding on to the hope that I'm going to find this person. I've been holding on to this. I'm going to open up now. I'm going to tell her what she was asking earlier, and not push her away. And so that's him kind of getting past that isolation or that solitary, the name of the episode, nature.
I was waiting for him to play card game.
Yeah. Obviously it's called solitary because of him. It's called solitary because of Rousseau. It's also called solitary because of Nadia in solitary confinement. Probably didn't need to explain all that, but but yeah, the point is, because of meeting Rousseau, he kind of makes progress in that way. He kind of decides, okay, I need to allow myself to be attached to other people, and to let them in. And yeah, he starts with her in that moment, and he tries to convince her to come with him. Like, you don't have to be alone. And she doesn't take that opportunity, for whatever reason she might have. But she does. That's the funny thing too, right? Is she says the thing to him about, like, oh, maybe it's too painful to talk about. But then every time he asks her about Alex, she, like, completely ignores the question.
Yeah.
Presumably for the same reason. It's too painful to explain, to talk about. And then at the very end, she doesn't take him up on the offer to go with him. But when he asks the final time, she does give him the short, simple answer, my child.
Yeah.
Alex was my child. And I'm guessing you didn't remember that either.
No, I didn't. But as soon as she said it, I had a whole bunch of memories that I probably created in my own head as to where Alex plays in the show and whatnot.
The fact that she's asking, where is Alex, that tells you something when you combine it with the reveal that Alex was her child, that, like, okay, like, she must have some reason to think that these other people took her child.
Yes.
And so Rousseau's asking him, thinking he's one of these people, like, where's my kid at? But Like as soon as like she doesn't want to believe like his story about the plane crash and stuff, but as soon as he starts expressing human emotion that she can really relate to in a way that she hasn't had anybody else to have any kind of connection with. She can't help herself but like empathize with him and like get all in his face and like I'm so sorry when he expresses some kind of pain. And then when he offers to fix the music box, I don't know. She's obviously not well adjusted after 16 years alone. So she's very much bouncing back and forth between the extremes. But yeah, I mean, that's my read on some of that.
This episode, I like that. This episode gave me such a flood of made up memories. like I'm telling you, the entire time they're like, I convinced myself at some point she like forcefully kissed him while she had him tied up and got on top of him. I convinced myself that he drew her in with the music box and that's when he grabbed her and stabbed her or whatever. I convinced myself that when she reached out for it, he pulled it back and smashed it at some level. Like, I don't know what twisted shows I've seen where people are flipping the script on the person who's got them captive. But man, I had all these things I was expecting and none of them happened. So I just don't even know where it came from.
I mean, probably from other shows because everything you just said sounds so familiar to me. So I feel like
maybe it's just like a played out line of things that happen when somebody's trapped in a show. I don't know, they're tied up.
Yeah, trying to get away, and then it usually doesn't work out.
Can I say something that's not meant to be a critique?
I thought you could express criticism.
Okay, all right. Well, and it's not even fair to call it criticism, maybe, but I didn't like it. I didn't like the episode. Like, it didn't blow my skirt up. It felt. I mean, you need the background on Saeed, right? So it's like I don't even know why I feel that way. It doesn't make any sense, but it felt so filler. To me.
So that's funny, and I'm glad you said it, because I don't know if I would have remembered to express this myself. When I was younger, it was one of my favorite episodes. Because it was a big deal. It introduced Rousseau. It introduced all these mysterious things. As I've gotten older, I do feel like it's a weaker episode compared to the ones that came before. Partly because, and that's part of why I get worried watching it with new people that they're not going to like the questions it raises. Is it does feel incomplete. It does feel like, okay, this is a lot of setup for stuff. Like, yes, it's interesting, but like, unless you've convinced me that there are going to be really good answers to these questions coming soon, like, that doesn't really do a lot. And then
it'd be like watching them set the stage for a performance of Phantom of the Opera. It's like, and then making you leave right before they start it.
Well, it's so
probably not that bad.
Well, like, I just talked about some of the themes of the episode. I mean, the main theme of the episode being isolation and not being connected to people, and everything I just rattled off about that. Like, I came to all of that by desperately looking for like what makes this episode not bad. And like, I kind of like talked myself into that, and I stand by it. I think all of that is true. But like, I don't think it was executed perfectly, or that's the thing. I don't even know how I would fix it if I were the one making it. Something about it just didn't feel complete or authentic. And maybe part of it is like Saeed just left the last episode, and his reason for doing it, the way he explained it to Kate, was, he couldn't trust himself around people. If he can't keep that promise, he shouldn't be around them. Versus this episode, like, he kind of says to Rousseau that it's like, oh, I don't want to form attachments to people because I'm holding on to this thing. It's too painful and all that. And like, I'm not saying those things can't both be true. And he just told Kate that one thing, but like, now reflecting on it in this episode, he's realizing, okay, no, this is actually what it was. But yeah, it does feel a little like, okay, well, we didn't really resolve the thing that you said that you were leaving to resolve.
Yes.
You leave for one episode, encounter this situation, then immediately you're like, I'm going back. And you haven't really reckoned with the fact that you tortured somebody when you said you were never going to do that again, which again is what the last episode insinuated that he was doing.
Unless, however lame and short it was, him being tortured.
No, that's
righted the ship. He's like, all right, now we're even.
I mean, yeah.
That's a crazy thought. But
I really like that. I just wish the episode would have maybe hinted at that in some way. That somehow made him feel that he had his toned. So that's like that's just a random stab as to part of why this episode doesn't really click for me either anymore.
And I'm playing the other side of that fence. We may have talked about this earlier. I'm very old, but I also feel like this show sets you up to end up being entitled to a bunch of information, like a bunch of it, like oh man, that's it's like next shiny thing, and so when you get something that's a little deeper, a little more bland, for lack of better words, then you're like, oh, that's not good enough.
Well, I mean,
and maybe
we kind of talked about that with the moth, and you kind of convinced me. You were kind of making the point that it can be deeper and not have those big reveals, and it can still be good. This one, I don't feel like that it's the same thing. I feel like it. I mean, it also doesn't have like a big twist reveal, which I was saying the moth didn't have. Certainly not as far as Saeed, because most of the twists that have happened so far have been character reveals.
Yeah. Kate,
Locke, Sun. These big moments of like, oh, didn't see that coming. Charlie didn't really have that. He had the thing. They kind of subvert your expectations with how he got addicted to heroin, but it wasn't like a mind-blowing twist. This Saeed thing, it's kind of the same thing again. They kind of set your expectations that he's going to kill her or cause her to be killed in the flashbacks. But then it's like, oh no, he actually did. He actually did help her get away. So they do kind of subvert your expectations a little bit, but again, by no means is it like, oh wow. Which again doesn't need to be in every episode, but I mean that might be just an additional piece of why it feels a little more lackluster. It could also be so much of it is focused on Saeed and this person we've never met before. We haven't come to care about this person. We know nothing about her except, she's hurting Saeed and she seems like she's a little crazy. So why should we? They don't really get you to empathize with her too deeply. Right. Now that I'm thinking about it.
Yeah.
Which they didn't really have time to do that, I guess. But so my point with that was that we spend the bulk of the episode with Saeed. And then this character we don't know, and then you have the flashback part of the episode with other people we don't know. I do start to care about Nadia and empathize with her much quicker than I did Rousseau.
Yeah.
But then what story you do have with the rest of the characters that we like, which I love that, by the way. I like everything with the golf thing and the humor of that, but we don't get a lot of it. So it almost feels like we're missing. Every episode so far, it's been all of these people interacting, and we don't get so much of that in this episode. So I wonder if that's another part of it. There's literally so many things. None of them feel like they're the right answer for why I don't love the episode. But yeah, those are just guesses.
Well, while we're on the kind of on that subject, I liked the golf thing, and so two things. One, I made up in my mind again. So it's very short that Sawyer went from being the turd that he's always been to Kate makes the one statement to him, and the next thing you know, he's showing up at the golf match, and then it's I don't know, it's kind of awkward because like he throws out his bet, which is like, okay, well, he has more crap than everybody else, he's got more to throw on the table, but then there's not the response he was looking for, just a matter of seconds, and it was I don't know, it was so Charlie Brownish. It's almost like he was going to put his head down and walk back to the beach, and then Kate's like, he's came this far, I'll save him, and she jumps in and makes some comment, and then I don't know, it's just I expected all of them to like ha 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 just laugh, like and bring Sawyer into the fold. So it's kind of weird. But here's the other thing about that is Sawyer always treating Jack like he's this trophy boy, and almost questioning why people would look up to him, and he's not a saint type thing. I created in my mind that Jack messed the putt up on purpose. Like he pulled it on purpose just so he wasn't winning type thing. And I don't know where I got that from. I don't think it actually showed.
It doesn't show.
It doesn't show whether he made the putt or not.
This was the first time watching it, taking my notes, that I appreciated that they didn't show it. They didn't show if Sawyer won the bet or not. Yeah. I liked that. Well, so you have a much harsher opinion of that scene specifically than I do.
Yeah, of course I do.
I like it. It works for me. That said, I do agree with the first part of what you were saying, that like we literally, and part of why I thought the same thing today is we did the screening last night, the group screening of Confidence Man, the one we talked about last week. So I literally just got done talking to a bunch of people last night about why Sawyer pushes people away. He wants people to hate him, and he doesn't make progress in that episode, towards redemption or, moving on from his past. Literally just got done talking about all that last night, and then today I go and watch this episode to take notes, and it's immediately like Sawyer's like, okay, I'll make an effort.
Yeah.
It's like,
I'm
okay.
gonna work hard at this.
It's like, yeah, I just got done telling everybody why I love that. That's literally what he's not doing right now. But again, playing devil's advocate, like, I can appreciate that he's not just one thing all the time, that he is conflicted. There's a part of him that craves that connection, and then there's this other part of him that's like, no, you don't deserve it. And then causes him to push people away, kind of like Saeed was talking about, but obviously in a much more aggressive way. So that's me. It also bothered me. That's what I'm saying. But my defense of it is like, well, it's been a couple days. He's a human being. There's nuance there. It's natural for him to want to crave connection. And I think what Jack said did get to him at the beginning of the episode, because Sawyer's still being a dick at the start of the episode when Jack's changing his bandage, and he's taunting Jack, and Jack's like, I'm here because nobody else wants anything to do with you, and like, it seems like that maybe bothers Sawyer a little bit, and then he gives like the snide comment about, well, she does, and then Jack's like, all right, change your own bandages. And so I think if we look at that as like the start of Sawyer's arc for the episode, I think maybe that's why he kind of makes a little bit of effort.
Kind of his final straw.
Yeah, like he kind of realizes what Jack said, and on some level he feels that. Like,
One other thing I took from when she was leaving, to go to the golf match, if you will, earlier you talked about like his character just kind of making the one-liners and being the jokester, and it's like a perfect example of that when he's like, oh no, a doctor playing golf, what's next, the cop eating donuts, and it's like, it just took me back to when we first had that conversation, as if you say, wow, that's what I like about him, like, oh yeah, he's always got something funny to say. So I thought that was a kind of a cool thing for me to focus on after we talked about that. But
there's a lot of humor in the episode, in the golf storyline, like obviously the Hurley and Charlie of it all. I like when the scene that starts with Jack and Michael like real close to each other. They're acting like they're talking about something so serious. It's like, I'll go with 7 hour.
And what's so funny about that is I knew they were talking about golf as soon as that scene started. And so it's like, but yet I didn't, it's not like I remembered it. Well, but I'm just like, at the same time, like, it has to be something serious.
That's the thing about watching it this way with no commercials. Like, it was only a couple minutes ago that we left off with them, and Hurley was talking. Well, what else would they be talking about? Like, it wouldn't just randomly cut to some other serious situation. I do wonder if back in the day with commercials, maybe some people like
took them a second.
Didn't remember.
Yeah. That would make a lot of sense now that now you say like on average a minute and a half, back in the day on average at least. So
and even I think a lot of people probably even back then saw it coming, and that's okay. Like, I think the joke still works when you see it coming.
Yes.
It's kind of poking fun at how serious everything else has been, and now it's like, okay, well, they're having fun for once. I get kind of on that topic. The guy with the rash, that's another, I think we talked about it, you and I, on here. It's another example of them pulling somebody that's just been allegedly been in the background the whole time. And it's like, okay, well, this is this person. And they introduced another one, the Ethan guy that was like with Locke.
Yeah. So two things. Number one, Mr. Rash guy. I don't recall him at any point. But before Ethan spoke a word, when he was just kind of walking up behind Locke or whatever it was, where it kind of showed him past Locke, his character, nothing about him, but just his look, that the way that actor looked came back to me, and I got this sense that I do not like Ethan. And I don't know. I have nothing to quantify that with.
Do you no idea why?
I have no idea why, but I don't like Ethan. And so I'm sure it'll be revealed to me.
Yeah.
Or it'll be revealed to me that my brain's making up stuff again.
Yeah, that you're thinking of something else maybe. But, that's interesting. Because, I was wondering if you remembered either of them at all.
I didn't remember Ethan.
Yeah, gotcha. So, talking about the ration stuff, like, you caught that Sun after the last episode, helping with Shannon. Like, she seems to be like Jack's nurse now, kind of.
Yeah.
Giving that guy aloe. So, yeah, I just thought that was worth noting. And I think that's actually it, except for our fan mail section.
Yes.
Yeah. So, my father, your brother, which you had trouble keeping straight last week.
My father's son.
He listened to our episode. He's been watching he's been listening to the podcast, and we obviously, you brought up a conversation you and him had about selfishness, like nothing being like truly selfless, and he basically sent me a voice message wanting to clarify some of what he was saying in that conversation, I guess.
Hey, Chris, it's me. Hey, I was listening to the podcast this morning, the one that you and Mike did on the Moth episode. I thought it was really good. I appreciate the shout out. I wanted to say when I was talking to Mike about there not really being any acts that are purely altruistic, there's a nuance to that I wanted to convey to you. The idea is that we're all inextricably bound together, kind of woven into the fabric of what we call humanity. And this being part of that single organism, it's like I can't act unilaterally. I have free will, but paradoxically, everything that I do impacts others to some extent. And because of the way we're networked together, it's my belief that anything I do to help you also helps me. And anything I do to hurt you also hurts me. It's always a matter of degree. So what I was talking to Mike about is that even if I'm doing something that appears to be selfless, I'm still benefiting. So to Mike's point, even if I give an anonymous donation to a charity, I'm not getting public recognition, but I'm getting the satisfaction of knowing that I gifted that money to the charity. So there really isn't anything you can really think about doing for another person that doesn't in some way benefit you. And that doesn't make it wrong. It's a consequence, in my estimation, of the way that we're all bound together, kind of like a single organism that is expressed as individual entities with free will, or what I would call free will, not in the ontological sense. But so anyway, I'm just throwing that out, and just as a clarification, I guess, if you want to talk about that a little more deeply. But that's kind of was the point of what I was saying to Mike about the illusion of selflessness. Anyway, hey, great job on the podcast. I really like the metaphor of the moth and the cocoon and breaking through and becoming stronger by virtue of adversity. I love the journey you're on with this, and there's a lot of really cool little takeaways embedded in the writing that I think are really, really artful. All right, I love you, son.
I guess I should have clarified. Our last episode that came out was the one where we talked about that,
Yes.
and that's the one that he's responding to. We have last week we recorded Confidence Man, which isn't out yet, so he wasn't responding to that one, obviously. Right. I agree with a lot of what he said there. I don't know if you had anything to add to it or say.
No, I mean, how do you add to it? So many large words. No, he and I have talked about this, more than once. And so like when I brought it up, it's, when you talk about like surrounding yourself with people who, it's not just an echo chamber. Like they'll give you the other side, kind of like what we're doing on the podcast. Like, yeah, that's one way of looking at it. And then you'll give me another way of looking at it. I almost said your brother. My brother, your dad, he's very good at that. And I think some of my favorite conversations with him, surround that type of a thing where I have this thought process. He gives me another way to look at it. And not that the way I was looking at it was completely wrong, right, but I can no longer look at it through my lenses without trying his on again. So like every time something like that comes up, I'm like, Chip said that this one thing, does it apply here type thing. And so I find it very cool, like that I get those in my database from him. So hearing him expand on it doesn't do much for me, only because we've expanded on things like that together so many different times. However, I hope the listeners will hear that, and maybe it sparks something for them, because I don't know how many people think that deeply about how everything technically could have a bit of selfishness to it. And again, once you think like that, once you try to apply that to everything that you could possibly do, you come to the realization that, like, crap, there's just nothing that can be done pure. Just pure selflessness.
Well, I mean, that's what we were talking about it in that episode. I think what he's like wanting to clarify is that like he doesn't mean it in a like
a negative way,
right?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
So like you don't have to feel bad,
sure,
because it seems like that gets you down a little bit. Maybe.
No. It does get me down. I just think it's crazy how you could take something. It could sound so negative, but indeed, there's nothing negative about it at all. It's just the reality of what it is. Yeah. Now, I don't know if you want
to... And that should encourage you almost, the way that he says it, like it's almost like it should encourage you to do things that benefit others, because, hey, it benefits you as well. Every good thing...
Well, and it's whether it's the Christian thought process and foundation of bringing light to the darkness, it's all the same, right? Like if you're in a dark spot and I'm bringing light into your life, well, I'm bringing light into our life. You know, like I have to have some feeling towards you to even want to share my light with you if you're in a dark spot. So by nature of bringing you out of the darkness and bringing light to you, now I've made our light expand. Now we go out and we take that to the next patch of darkness, so forth and so on. And so, yeah, I love that aspect of it. There's no way around it. Like you can't possibly do good things for others without doing good for yourself. And on the flip side, you can't possibly do harm to others without bringing harm to yourself.
Yeah.
And I love it.
What I really liked about it was we haven't really gotten into it yet where we are in the show, but I don't feel like it's a spoiler to say that is the level of how we're all connected is a huge part of what this show explores.
Yes.
So far, not as much. It hasn't been too deeply explored.
Yeah, not as in your face as it will become.
Yeah. But yeah, that definitely goes on to be a huge point of the show. So this next thing that I wanted to address also came in response to the most recently released episode, which was on the Moth. And this one comes from Homo Sapiens 99, who said, "These podcast episodes, as well as the group discussions, have given me a whole new perspective on Boone that I never considered before." I thought you'd appreciate that.
It.
Yeah. Because, we talk about Boone almost every week. We hadn't talked about him this week. now we're, I guess.
Up yours, Boone. I like this princess comment.
Oh, yeah.
He calls her princess.
Yeah, they have a little...
We eat sunscreen, princess.
they have Banner again in this one. After last episode, he was, like, trying to take care of her.
Yeah.
They have banter in this one again, but it's a bit more playful. It's not so mean. But anyways... I liked that comment because I think I've said this already, but in case I haven't, I also have never thought about doing Boone so deeply before doing this. I don't like something about how he came up in the pilot, and then just we kept following that thread every episode. I don't think that I've ever thought about it so deeply as us talking about it, and the more we have talked about it, the more I'm like, damn, they really had that well defined.
Yeah,
like who he was and that aspect of his character. So yeah, I appreciated that somebody else also is kind of having that experience.
That's awesome.
So this next thing that I wanted to address is from Time Gentleman, also known as Ben Ward.
Ben's back!
Yeah. So he actually left this on my spoilery commentary for House of the Rising Sun. So this is a few episodes back for you. The one where it was about Sun.
Yeah, no, I knew exactly what you're talking
about. And then where they found the bodies, Adam and Eve, which we didn't have a lot to talk about with that. Anyways, he commented on that. He doesn't get into spoilers, so that's why I figured we'd talk about it here. "When I first watched this episode, I took the stones in the bag to be a hint that the bodies were very old, due to Locke having told Walt in a previous episode that backgammon is the oldest game in the world, and they found sets in ancient Mesopotamia. I also found it intriguing that Locke seems not to see them before Jack slips them back in the bag and replaces it. As far as I'm aware, this never becomes important, but it still feels to me like they were maybe trying to set something up there." Yeah, I just thought that was interesting because I don't remember how much you and I talked about it, but like Jack says the clothes would take 40 to 50 years to debride to the level that they did, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're not older than that. The bodies,
especially considering Adam and Eve were found in a cave, and so again, I'm not the expert, Jack is, but if you're saying those clothes would deteriorate in take 40 years to deteriorate to that level, well, 40 years outside of that cave versus 40 years inside that cave, they're gonna look completely different. So all that to say, in my humble opinion, with the limited knowledge I have, I would expect those clothes, if he thought they were deteriorated to the level of 40 years, they probably could have been much, much older, having been in that constant temp with that constant humidity that you would find, in a cave setting. Who knows how old they could be? Yeah. And again, I think I'm accurate when I say, they found mummified bodies and whatnot, deep in caves and caverns that were very, very old. However, were preserved quite well for that very reason.
Well, and I think what he was responding to was something I mentioned in my commentary, but I didn't mention when you and I were talking about it because I don't think I remembered it yet. It was scripted. Another part of that episode when Jack's telling Kate, like, "Oh, I don't think they were just buried here. I think they lived here." He was talking about in the script. He says they died here decades ago, maybe centuries ago. So it was in the script that they could have been much older than that. Yeah. So the writers did have that in mind, and I just think that's worth noting. There's a wide range of time in which they may have been coming from.
I like the backgammon piece too because I didn't put that level of thought into that.
No, me neither. Yeah,
but I mean,
but I think that's a good point.
I think when Ben brings it up, like, wow, why else would that be there if not, kind of like evidence to the comment that Locke made about backgammon being old. Yeah. It almost seems like for the intellectual who's really getting into the facts of this storyline, like, here's a little treat for you. So,
it seems like an intentional, Now that he said it, I'm like, yeah, I do think maybe that was what the writers were thinking there.
Well played.
I actually got an email about Confidence Man as well, which we recorded last week, and so what I like about our fan mail this week is we're getting feedback about things that we've already talked about. This is a good opportunity to illustrate that if you have things to say about an episode we've already talked about, in no way does that mean that we can't still talk about it. Again, we want this to be a back and forth. So if you have things to respond to that we've said in previous episodes, let's keep the conversation going. So that's why I brought up the thing that Ben said about the 6th episode. And then obviously my dad, your brother, was responding to the Moth episode, the 7th episode. So now let's keep it going with the 8th episode. Confidence Man, Homo Sapiens 97 had this to say. When I first saw this episode, for some reason I thought the flashbacks were a big misdirect and that we were actually watching Sawyer's parents being conned by the real Mr. Sawyer. I thought the big plot twist was that the child at the end was Sawyer and that having Mr. Sawyer be played by Josh Holloway was just a misdirection. I'm not sure why I came to that conclusion, but it wasn't until my first rewatch of the show that I realized how stupid I was. Well, what's funny about that, so if you remember, that's the same person that emailed in about how young they were when they watched it. Yep. And I talked about some of the things that I, being young, had misconceptions about. And then, it led into our conversation about how old do you think is appropriate. So definitely not judging him too harshly. In fact, at the screening last night for Confidence Man, after having received that email, I was for some reason I got in my head about are they gonna think that this is Sawyer? But because of the way that the sequence of events depicted on screen is, you still think that Sawyer is the one that letter was written to by the time it shows that kid walk into the living room in that flashback. So watching it with them, I was like, are they going to get kind of confused and think there's going to be some weird twist with that Sawyer? And I don't know if I would have had that concern if not for reading that email, but I did wonder if other people may have thought that at some point. Yeah. So I just thought it was really interesting.
Yeah. I don't think, I would just say, I don't think at whatever age, this person was when they watched it, I don't think it's dumb. I think it's, I think the younger you are, the more advanced the thought process is, which is pretty cool because, the younger you are, the more you tend to take things at face value and miss everything that might be underlying. Like if it's not just right in your face, you're just like, okay, that makes no sense, and you're moving on intellectually. So I like the fact that that's where their mind was at.
Yeah,
it's pretty cool.
Well, I mean, yeah.
Now I'm trying to go back in my mind and replay it and come to the same conclusion.
Well, that's the thing too, is like it's actually kind of an impressive thought process for how young they were. 100%. That their mind even thought that was a possibility. And I will say, there are other shows that have done similarly silly things like that.
Yeah.
I mean, hell, I'm thinking of Smallville off the top of my head, which obviously isn't more recent. It was around the same time, but rewatching it recently, probably for the last time in my life. Not that I haven't enjoyed aspects of it, but I do think there are things about it that make it worthwhile. Specifically, the Lex Luthor plotline and tracking his descent and that actor's portrayal of him. Anyways, my point is there are episodes of Smallville that do very similar things where they use actors to play other characters in weird flashbacks and stuff like that. So I guess it would be weirder for Sawyer because Sawyer's not actually related to the real Mr. Sawyer. Right. So it would be weird to have the same actor playing somebody that's not related to him. But anyway, my point is, like, for being that age, I don't think it's like a ridiculously embarrassing thought, especially knowing that other shows do things like that sometimes.
I think it's more impressive.
Yeah. So, but all right. Once again, if you guys want to be part of these conversations, we would really like that. It would really add, hearing other perspectives adds to the experience of this show. It adds to, it unlocks thought processes that maybe you and I aren't, reaching on our own. Again, that's why watching with all the people I've watched it with over the years, every time it's a new thing, I'm hearing new thoughts, new ideas. So yeah, please, feel free to send in video messages, audio messages, or just written messages to dr.candlepun@gmail.com. Or if you're watching the video versions of this on YouTube, you can just feel free to comment, and we'll get you on the show that way. We really want to hear from you guys. It was nice hearing from so many people this time. And yeah, I think that's everything that we've got for this week. We actually will not be back next week with a new episode because 20 years ago, Solitary aired, and then the next week there was no new episode. So we will be back in 2 weeks with our episode discussing season 1, episode 10 of Lost, Raised by Another.
Hope to see you then.
I would now like to give a special thank you to the currently active donors. These include candidate number 90, Ben Ward, candidate number 108, Jeffrey Winslow, candidate number 69, Brian Phillips, candidate number 32, Chuck Boyd, and candidate number 341, Hans. If you too would like to become a candidate, you can do so for as little as $1. One-time or recurring donations can be set up on Ko-fi.com/Candlepun or Patreon.com/Candlepun. A donation of any amount will get you credited in this podcast and added to the candidate wall, which will be displayed in all video versions of the episodes of this podcast from that point forward, even once you're no longer donating. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank the multiple people that have donated equipment and resources that are used in the production of this podcast. These include Mary Mullins, Brandon Huth, Charles Huth, William McMahon, and Charlene McMahon. Until next time, namaste and good luck. Damn, they really had that well defined.
Yeah,
like who he was and that aspect of his character. Put that back on silent.
Piece of shit.
To like this video, click the thumbs up. Or, if there has been an incursion by the hostiles, click the thumbs down. To leave feedback, enter a comment below. To be notified when more videos arrive, click the circle and then select the notification bell. To view previous content from this channel, click either of the two boxes.